No, your eyes are not fooling you. This is indeed a ThinkPad T480 running Windows 7. Getting this to work was not the easiest thing in the world. I initially wanted to make this video months back since a lot of the footage captured here was done at the end of 2025, but with the significant changes in my personal life, it's been a little challenging getting this done. Luckily, I've finally found time to attend to this. I've had to rewrite this script a couple of times, so I hope you appreciate this video and the effort I put in here. The ThinkPad T480 is a laptop that really does not need much of an introduction. If you're like me and a Linux user, you've definitely heard this model mentioned before as a good budget ThinkPad for beginners. This laptop is unique in that we're able to get it comfortably running Windows 7 while simultaneously being a device that meets the official requirements for Windows 11. This particular unit that I have here has been maxed out at 64 gigs of RAM, making it quite overkill for what we'll be demonstrating in this video. For this process, we'll be needing a few things. A Windows 7 ISO, in this case, we're using the Ultimate Edition because why not? A flash drive with at least 8 gigs of space. Of course, we'll need our T480, and finally, another computer. This isn't a must, but having another computer will be helpful to have in case you run into issues and need to troubleshoot. And although this video is made specifically for the T480, I do think that some of the information here will be of use to people trying to install Windows 7 on newer systems. The first thing I want to do is answer the question of why Windows 7 doesn't just automatically work on this machine. The answer is going to sound familiar if you've ever tried installing Windows XP on a system released after 2006. As far as I can recall, NVMe drives and flash storage were first introduced to consumer devices between 2012 and 2013, with the first iterations appearing widespread on devices like the iMacs and MacBooks that came out during that period. Most PC manufacturers were still shipping their devices with mechanical hard drives, so having an SSD in a builder laptop was still somewhat of a luxury if you weren't the owner of what was at the time a brand new Retina MacBook. I say new because back then it was new, but now those systems aren't even supported by Apple anymore. So by default, Windows 7 doesn't ship with NVMe drivers and even USB 3.0 drivers for that matter. They need to be integrated in order for the Windows 7 installation wizard to detect them. I've had a go at trying to use DISM to integrate the drivers along with the Windows updates and certificates needed to get this working, but each time I'm unable to get past the driver screen inside of the installation wizard. Weirdly, when I click browse, it's able to see the SSD and the flash drive, meaning both the USB and NVMe drivers are detected and working, but it's still not letting me install. At that point, I felt like I was exhausting myself more than I needed to, so I took a little time to try to explore other options. It was while I did this that I remembered that Gigabyte had already made a tool for this years ago that does this exact process. It's called the Gigabyte Windows 7 USB installation tool. Unfortunately, it does appear that the original utility was removed from the Gigabyte website, but there are of course other links to it that you can locate with not too much difficulty. Before we proceed, I'll need to flash the Windows 7 ISO image to our flash drive. In this case, I used Rufus to copy it using the MBR partition scheme. After that, I launched the Gigabyte tool and made sure to select all the options relating to USB, NVMe, and the extra packages, which are the Windows updates for certificates. To launch the installation, I'll first need to set the boot mode to legacy only, which will disable UEFI on this ThinkPad. Although methods of installing Windows 7 on UEFI exist, that's well out of the scope of this video. When it finally restarts, I hit F12 to get into our boot menu and select our flash drive. Once I got through the hard part, which was the installation, I finally get to the Windows 7 desktop. Of course, that doesn't mean I'm done with driver installations just yet. Using a driver installation utility known as Snappy Driver Installer Origin, I'm going to need to install the rest of the drivers. Be very careful not to use Snappy Driver Installer, as that version is known to have malware bundled into it. Use the one ending with Origin instead. At this point, I had just moved to a new house, so I didn't have Ethernet configured yet. Later in this video, you'll see that I ran my ThinkPad off Ethernet when I got that working, but for this reason, I started off by installing the Wi-Fi drivers, since I wanted to get the system up to date in the event that some of the drivers would require dependencies, such as the .NET framework. To update my system, we're using a tool known as the Legacy Update, which supports OSs as old as Windows 2000 and as new as Windows 11. The people behind this project are doing excellent work, so please support them if you're able to using their donation links. Since I'm basically installing a decade's worth of updates, it's not surprising that this took a while, with several restarts needing to be done. And since this is an 8th gen Intel processor, we can see that Microsoft did put effort into blocking updates for newer systems, but there's an easy workaround known as the WUFUC patch, which will trick Windows into installing those updates anyways. As soon as I finished that, I finished the rest of the updates and proceeded with installing the rest of the drivers, with the exception of the graphics driver since I'll be using a modded driver. And on that note, the next thing I did was installed the modified version of the Intel graphics drivers due to the fact the original drivers will refuse to play any videos on the desktop or online unless a modification is applied to one of the DLLs in the installation files. The modification apparently limits the usable VRAM to 512 megabytes, but you're really not missing out on anything due to the fact that the ThinkPad's BIOS is limited to that amount anyways. Now that I got all those things out of the way, the next thing I tried to do is install GTA 4. Since this game should support Windows 7 with no issue, I was really surprised to see that getting the game that I've owned on Steam for 12 years refused to run on the updated version Rockstar rolled out. I tried installing Steam and the current version of Steam isn't compatible with Windows 7. I then used a patch to get newer versions of applications to work on Windows 7, which at least allowed me to open Steam. No matter what I tried, I just couldn't get the Steam version of GTA 4 to run. I should say the Rockstar version of the game since it is Rockstar that made these changes, but you guys know what I mean. Eventually, I gave up and decided it's time to use an alternative method to install GTA 4. No details about what I did, but I'm sure you guys have an idea by now. We then get the game to run and oh man, I got flashbacks from back in the day. Nowadays, I have hardware which can run this game with ease, but back in middle school when I first played this, I had to play around with the settings to get a playable experience, and even then it wasn't the greatest since this game is notorious for having an unoptimized PC port without some modifications and community patches, one of which was the Fusion Fix utility that I just demonstrated using in this video. On a different note, I thought I'd have a go at using some productivity software on this thing. In this case, we're trying Office 2016, which is the last version to officially work on Windows 7. Over here, we're using Word, which of course works fine, and for basic word processing, this is more than enough. At the end of the day, the fundamental mechanics of most word processors have not changed. One issue I did run into though was with multilingual packs for Office, which may be something that those of us who speak more than language might want to take note of. Most versions of Office dating back to the 90s have had the ability to do spell checks as well as run localized in more than one language. However, due to the language packs currently on Microsoft's website being packaged for newer versions of Windows, I had to find an older version of the Office deployment tool. If you're like me and you work in IT, you've probably heard of this tool at some point. Using this and a custom XML listing both languages, I was able to install both the English and Arabic languages of Office and type find in both languages with proofing working. One question I'm sure some of you may have is whether or not Thunderbolt works on Windows 7. The answer to that question is thankfully yes. Not only that, but I've tested this laptop with both an OWC docking station and a Dell one. Both worked perfectly fine on this system. Considering Thunderbolt has been around since 2011, I don't find this particularly surprising, but it's definitely nice to see that it at least works. The only thing to keep in mind is that you may have to reopen SDIO to get the devices on your docking station working fine, like for instance, the Ethernet or USB ports. I also don't know if more modern docking stations would work on Windows 7, but the ones I have definitely worked fine. Although this was an interesting project to work on, I'd like to point out a couple of issues that I did run into while doing this. After installing all the drivers that I could, I encountered a problem where Windows hangs on startup for around 40 seconds with nothing but the mouse cursor showing. Luckily, there is a solution for this. Inside of Services, you'll have to disable a service called the Lenovo Intelligent Thermal Solution Service. Wow, that was a mouthful. It appears that SDIO forced the installation of that driver. Based on my limited research, the driver appears not to even be compatible with Windows 7. Not only that, but it fails to start up properly in Windows 7, which is what is causing the 40-second delay. Disabling it completely inside of Services appears to resolve the issue, and now Windows 7 boot times are pretty snappy. The other issue I had, which I unfortunately was not able to resolve, also had to do with the drivers. Although almost all of the drivers installed, there were a few of them that I unfortunately was not able to get working. One of them appears to be tied to the TPM 2.0 chip on the system. No matter what I tried or what drivers I attempted to install, it remained as an unknown device inside of Device Manager. If anyone has any idea what could be done to fix this, feel free to let me know in the comment section. If you like this video and enjoy these niche tech projects, please like and subscribe to my channel. I'm hoping to commit to making more videos, and any support you guys show will help out a lot. If you have any feedback or suggestions on what I should have done or what other projects I can try, leave a comment down below. See you guys next time.